October 19, 2014, from M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, Maryland. It was the Atlanta Falcons at the Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens won the toss and they elected to defer, so the Falcons got the ball first and they went 3 and out, so they punted it to Baltimore, who now took over on their own 48 with about 13 and a half left in the first. Forsett then ran for 3 yards, and an illegal use of the hands penalty against Atlanta gave them another 5, and so now it would be first down on the Atlanta 44. Flacco hit Daniels for a 2-yard pass, and then after an incomplete pass but a penalty of defensive pass interference against Atlanta would now make it first and goal on the Atlanta 6-yard line. Flacco then threw an incomplete pass, and a 1-yard run by Forsett made it 3rd and goal from the 5. Flacco then hit Daniels for the 5-yard touchdown pass, and it was now 7-0 Ravens over the Falcons. So now the Falcons took over with less than 12 minutes left in the first quarter, and they would go 3 and out and punt the ball to Baltimore, who would also go 3 and out, as they now punted it back to the Falcons, who took over on their own 45-yard line. They then moved across midfield and into field goal range and then got to the red zone, but on first down from the 17, a penalty of offensive holding brought them back outside of the red zone. And then on 3rd and 10 from the 17, as they'd cutting the yards back on a 10-yard pass from Ryan to Jones, Ryan was then sacked for an 8-yard loss, and he fumbled the ball, and Elvis Dumervil ended up recovering it for Baltimore. So now the Ravens had the ball on their own 25 with a little over 4 minutes left in the first, and they would bring the first quarter to a close in Atlanta territory, and after one it was 7-0 Baltimore over Atlanta. So now the Ravens would start the second quarter on the Atlanta 38. It was 2nd and 18. Flacco dropped back to pass, and he was intercepted by Alford. So now the Falcons had the ball back on their own 20. They would punt 5 plays later though, and so now the Ravens had the ball on their own 43 with less than 12 minutes left before halftime. They would punt now 5 plays later, and the Falcons would get the ball, where they would now go 3 and out and punt it back to the Ravens. So now the Ravens took over on their own 41 with about 7 minutes left before halftime. They got an offensive holding penalty on first down, so now it's 1st and 20 from the 31, but then Flacco hit Daniels for a 19-yard pass that brought the ball to the 50, as it was now 2nd and 1. They then picked up a first down, and then a few plays later, they got to the edge of the red zone, as it was 2nd and 7 from the Atlanta 21, and then Flacco hit Smith for a 20-yard pass, and he was down at the 1-yard line, so now it was 1st and goal from the 1, and Pierce punched it in from a yard out, and it was now 14-0 Ravens over the Falcons. So now the Falcons had the ball on their own 13 with about 2.5 minutes left before halftime, and they would go 3 and out. So now they punted the ball, and on the punt, they ended up fumbling it, and the Ravens recovered, so now they had the ball on the Baltimore 37 with about a minute left before halftime. But on first down, Matt Ryan was sacked by Elvis Dumervil, and then they ended up having a field goal attempt by Matt Bryant, as he attempted a 57-yarder, but it was windy there in Baltimore, and he missed it. It hit the crossbar, and it remained 14-0. But now, with 37 seconds left on the clock, the Ravens had the ball on their own 47. Flacco hit Daniels for an 11-yard pass. They then called a timeout. Then Flacco hit Smith for a 22-yard pass. Now it was first down on the Atlanta 20. Justin Tucker came out and he kicked the 38-yard field goal, and it was good, and it was now 17-0 Baltimore over Atlanta going into the locker rooms at halftime. So now coming out of the locker rooms, the Ravens would start things off in the second half, and they started their first drive of the second half on their own 19, and they would get across midfield when Joe Flacco hit Steve Smith for a 49-yard pass that brought the ball all the way to the Atlanta 28. Their drive then would stall, but Justin Tucker came out and kicked another 38-yard field goal, and it was now 20-0 Baltimore over Atlanta. The Falcons now would take over on their own 20, and they ended up reaching field goal range, but it was 4th and 7 from the 32, and they went for it, and Matt Ryan was sacked once again by Elvis, as he was definitely in the building, and Dumervil got the sack, and the Falcons turned the ball over on downs. So now the Ravens took over with about 7.5 minutes left in the third, and they had it on their own 44, and they ended up getting down into the red zone, and on 3rd and 9 from the Atlanta 16, Flacco dropped back to pass, but he was intercepted by Alford. So now the Falcons got the ball on their own 35 with about 3.5 minutes left in the third, and they would bring the third quarter to a close by turning the ball over on downs after getting into Baltimore territory. So after 3, it was 20-0 Baltimore over Atlanta, and to start the fourth quarter, the Ravens had the ball on their own 33. The Ravens would then bring the ball into Atlanta territory, but they would be forced to punt. And so now the Falcons got the ball on their own 10 with about 10 minutes left in the game. They would go all the way downfield as they marched 90 yards in 10 plays in less than 3 minutes, capped off by a 4-yard touchdown pass from Matt Ryan to Roddy White. And it was now 20-7 as the Falcons finally got on the board here in the fourth. So now the Ravens got the ball on their own 20 with a little over 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And they would end up punting on this possession. And the Falcons took over again on their own 10. And a few plays later, Terrell Suggs would end up sacking Matt Ryan for the safety. So now the Ravens would take over after the punt, after the safety. And they had the ball on the Atlanta 40. And then a few plays later, just 4 plays later, Joe Flacco hit Torrey Smith, for a 39-yard touchdown pass, and it was now 29-7 Baltimore over Atlanta. The Falcons would then take over on their own 29, but they would fail to score on their final possession of the game, and the game came to a close. And the final score, Baltimore 29, Atlanta 7. And so the Ravens are now 5-2 with the victory, and the Falcons are 2-5. And in this game, Joe Flacco was 16 for 25 with 258 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He also rushed for 4 yards off of 1 carry. Matt Ryan was 29 for 44 with 228 passing yards and a touchdown. The leading rusher in this game was Justin Forsett with 95 yards off of 23 carries, and the leading receiver was Roddy White with 100 yards off of 9 receptions and a touchdown. The leading tackler in the game was Smith for the Ravens, as Daryl Smith had 13 tackles. The Ravens combined for 5 sacks, as Elvis Dumervil and McPhee each had 2 sacks, and Terrell Suggs had 1 sack, that safety against Matt Ryan there. Werlo had a sack for the Falcons. He also had 10 tackles, and Bartu had 15 tackles. The only interceptions in this game was Alford, as he had a pair of interceptions, but it didn't really amount to much, as the Falcons only managed to get 7 points on the board. So the final score, Baltimore 29, Atlanta 7.